Okay, I'm going to start reassembling this shutter from a Kodak Retina Reflex S. All the parts are clean, they're just waiting to be reassembled and lubricated as I go. So we'll start here. This is the mechanism plate. This blade actuating ring needs to be fitted first. So sit that down in place and set that detent spring back over its post. Here's the lens tube. That fits in position right there. Now that pallet is swung out and it's blocking it. That's better. That's all sitting down flush. So at this stage there are 2 screws to go in. There are 3 screws that look like this, 2 shorter ones, which fit in that position and this position. There's also a slightly longer one which holds the bracket that holds the main drive spring. Now it's only very slightly longer, possibly a millimetre, perhaps not even that. Don't get them mixed up, it'll bring you grief. Right, so that's the mechanism plate assembled. And that should move freely. And I'm going to lubricate that now with a little graphite powder. This could be lubricated with molybdenum paste, or possibly even graphite grease if you're exceedingly sparing with it. But all I'm doing is working in a bit of graphite powder. And then the excess I'll blow away with a blower. That I'll move out of the shot. We can start with a nice fresh piece right here. So setting this across to the blades open position, I'm going to put the blades on now. Now there are 6 blades in all. These have all been cleaned. And cleaning parts for shutters can be for another video. The first blade is a plain blade. 5 of those are identical. The second blade has a steep cutout here. That's to clear where a shaft comes through at that point. Third blade is exactly the same as the first. Fourth blade again the same. Fifth blade again the same. And the sixth blade lies over the position of the first blade. That's the cover blade, that's the smaller blade. I'm just going to slightly close those blades to make this easier. And then here's the shutter case. That's clean and can go back on. I'm hooking this over so that the post comes through the back and clears everything, and holding that firmly together with finger and thumb without getting my greasy finger over the shutter blades. I put one of the 3 countersunk screws in place, and there are 2 more to follow. I don't screw those down hard at this stage, just snug them up. So I need to check that everything stayed in place and the blades are still seated. So I swing that post back and the blades open and close. So that's all good. Now I can do those 3 screws up snugly. And that shouldn't really require too much body English, that should be fairly easy to do. Alright, here I've got the front of an old Retina Reflex S that's been gutted to allow me to use it as a stand to hold the shutter. Makes it much easier to service the shutter. And we can move on to the next components, if I can find the right tray. Here we go. There are 2 fine springs to go in here first, and they are always entertaining to fit into place. This one is oriented in that direction and fits here on that lever, and the tail end of it on that stud. So I put a toothpick or a screwdriver tip or something similar here so that the spring cannot get away, and then I can lift the loose end with a fine pair of tweezers and swing it round behind that post. So these 2 components are sprung loaded. Next we have the B lever spring. The B lever spring fits in here, goes over a post, and there's a groove in the post in which the spring fits. Swing that round and past, check that it's in the groove, and it is. The B lever is the next component. So first of all, I'm going to open the shutter, hold that tab which is sprung loaded out of the way, hold back this one here, hold back that, slide this forward. With the blades fully opened, the B lever should be able to fall into place where it locks that ring actuating, the blade actuating ring in the open position. So that hooks into that spring that we put there earlier. There it is in place. Now we have this spring. This has got a post on the top of the screw, so we have to have a special screwdriver for this, which, like most of my tools, began its life as something else and was mutilated with a Dremel until it fit. So I'll wedge that on there. This fits in here. Let's do that up snug. Now the tail end of the spring can be swung round now, and the tail end of the spring fits against to the lens tube at this end and against this bracket at the other end. Right, next, this is the lever that sets the self timer or sets the flash sink. That requires a tiny touch of lubricant, and here I've got some molybdenum grease. There's 2 points that need to be done. There's a little teeth here that a catch catches against. It's like a little ratchet. That should be lubricated. And one spot inside the cover, which is exceedingly hard for you to see, under here there's a little shiny spring. On the inside of the shutter case, acts as a detent on this post, so I have to get that in there. Right. Getting this back in place is always tricky. It hooks into a slot in the side of the case. It's not playing the game today. I'm going to hold back that B lever, slide that shutter closed, give myself a little bit more room. That should hook in there, lift over the top of the post, and the arm, this post here, needs to hook behind the spring. And it's not getting there at the moment. I have to restart that. I'm on the wrong side of the lever. Okay, start again. This is a bit difficult because the insulator on this flash post is extra stiff because someone has put some heat shrink tubing on it for reasons that haven't been discovered. Right, now that fell into place. The chrome post is on the right side of the return spring there. That's ready to go. This is the piece that holds it all down in place, and that's the latch that you press before you can change the flash sink or set the self timer. So this fits over here. There's a little nub of a post here which locks it in position, and there are 3 screws. The 3 screws in this case are countersunk, the same as the ones that held the mechanism plate into the case, which is very convenient. And that can go back in its holder, out of harm's way. So far so good. If I unlock that, slide that to the first position, I can see that that spring I'd put in here first is not looped properly over its post, so I've got to achieve that before it decides it would rather be on the other side of the room and goes. That's better. It's nice and safe. Right, to carry on with assembling this shutter. gather together some more parts. Okay, now I'm going to put in the flash sink components here. Start with the pallet wheel. This little component here needs a little bit of lubrication. Again, I'll be using molybdenum paste. I'm just interested in getting that little tab at the back. A bit on the pivot won't hurt at all. Very little lubrication is required in shutters, but it is required. The old wives' tale about shutters running absolutely dry is exactly that. No mechanical device works especially well without lubrication of some sort. Right, so a little spring to go in here. It's held under some tension and tweezers won't do the job. So it's pliers. It hooks over that post into that little hole in the arm there, so that piece is under tension, and as the blades open, that releases that and releases the flash sink. So if it's set to B, to bulb flash, that pallet wheel delays the action of the shutter opening. A little bit more molybdenum grease here. Oh, it's a dry lubricant really, semi-dry. Only needs a smear. This goes over the post. Now, some helpful person had bent that flash contact out of shape, so this might be tricky to get into place. So, almost a two-handed job anyway. With this problem, it's going to be a three-handed job. It's going to go. Yes. And it's seated in place. The flash contact sits on top. I'll swing that across, which would cock that part of the shutter, and then the top piece goes on. Now there's a little arm underneath here that needs to be oriented the right direction, like that. This fits over the top pivot of that pallet wheel and then onto the posts at each end. So a small fixed screw at this end. A return spring at this end and a shoulder screw and make sure the spring sits around the shoulder of the screw and doesn't just get trapped underneath it, so that it's free to swing. That's good. Check the screw at the other end. And now I need to hook that spring back over its post. So I lift it up over that arm and it drops down into a little groove at the back of that arm. So that's sprung loaded. That piece holds the drive cam, the main drive cam, in position when the shutter's cocked. So much for that. Here we have the shutter release. Just going to put a tiny bit of molybdenum lubricant on there. This fits into the hole there. This tab has to go on the inside of the B lever because it lifts it back out of the way. And this spring comes right the way over that head of that screw and gets tucked under the plate. Oh, it's reluctant. Otherwise it'll jam the rest of that mechanism up. That's better. I think that had probably been adjusted by whoever had been in here earlier. Normally it fits in much easier than that. Alright, the main drive cam has various surfaces on here that really want to see some lubricant. This curved piece here, that interacts with the retard gear train, that should be lubricated. A smear inside the shaft, and then that fits on there, fits over that post. I'll swing this arm up out of the way to clear it, and it should just drop down into position with a bit of luck. Yes, it does. There are 2 points. Lift that back out, make this easier to see. There are 2 points here that need a touch of lubricant. One here and one here. Now those points are where the drive cam connects with the blade actuating ring and moves it first in one direction, and then when it reaches the end of the stroke returns in the opposite direction. A bit of hair stuck on that, we don't want that. Alright, this is the retainer and it holds the spring. And it sits over, that's the third position on that lens tube, and that's the one that had the slightly longer screw. So there's the screw, exactly the same as the other two were on that one, but as I say, just slightly longer. If you swap them around, you'd end up with one of the longer screws in the long screw in one of the other positions, and inevitably it would stick out at the back of the mechanism plate and catch on shutter blades. So that would be somewhat undesirable. Right, that comes round to its stop. We have our main drive spring here. That should be lubricated. It just needs a smear on the inside really, just to avoid too much friction. Now, the tab on that spring connects to a hole visible in there It sits into that hole, so we'll get that in place. It's done, and the end of the spring is trapped under that bracket. Alright, so if we cock the shutter by shifting that across, we should be able to cock this part, pull back this as the delay timer would be in the normal position, and the shutter will fire. So far, so good. Okay, to continue on with the shutter. Now we're at the stage where the retard gear train and the self timer or delay action can be fitted. So we'll start with the delay action, I think. So the key to success here is to make sure that the tab on the end of it is over the post, that it is on this side of the little lock that it connects to, and that the whole delay action mechanism is sitting flush in the base and isn't rocking. Now there are two screws here. One's got quite a big head on it. That's for the retard gear train. The smaller one and finer screw, that's the one for here. And that should just screw straight in. If I hold that tab back with the screwdriver, delay action will run down. As it does so, it pulls back this little lever here, which otherwise would prevent the shutter from running. Right, the retard gear train. To fit this, first we need to cock the shutter to bring this cam out of its current position, otherwise it would block the fitting. This just drops in here. This tab needs to be pulled back. The bottom of it fits behind the tab on the actuator, the actuating ring, shutter blade ring, and basically when the shutter blade ring is back in the park position, it pulls this tab out of backwards, which releases the pallets so that the gear train just runs free. As soon as the shutter is released and the actuating ring moves this way, the pallets fall into the wheel, and that causes there to be a delay. And we can that makes the timer run. Right, so this is the single screw that goes in here. And as I've said earlier, that's the hole it runs through is oversized, which allows you to make some adjustment to the position of the retard gear train, so it can be swung outwards or inwards, and that regulates how much it interferes with the action of the cam. Right, so the shutter's cocked, gear train's in, retard gear train's in. If we fire the shutter, we should get something around 1 second. probably sounded a little bit fast to me. I'll cock the shutter, cock the main cam. That allowed this to swing back out of the way so I can access the screw. Just slacken that. I'll just move that retard gear train in very, very slightly. Doesn't sound an awful lot different, to tell the truth. Okay. Now, we have the shaft that runs through the shutter, and this is actually how the shutter gets cocked. It's from the rotating of that shaft in the back of the shutter that cocks it. That ring there, you could probably do with a little bit of lubricant on it. So I'll just... This latch is in place when the shutter's cocked, which of course holds the shutter cocked until it's released. It's also pulls back the little tab on the delay action. So the end of that spring fits over that little post. It'll do it for me. It will. It rotates into position against the spring tension, and this should be meshed positioned. Why is that not sitting down flush? Not right here. That's better. Right. So as the ring comes back, it holds back the tab on the delay action, which would actuate it, start it running. The tooth here sits over the top of the last tooth on the rack. That's done. As it stands at the moment, the shutter wouldn't stay cocked. That ring would rotate, lift that cam, and the shutter would automatically release. This is the latch. It will hold it in place when it's cocked, and it fits over this post right here. This spring sets the shutter speeds for us, and round there the B lever. If we run a little bit of lubricant around there, you can see there's almost no lubricant there. It really takes very little. And I'll put a little bit under there, where that runs on the edge of the case. It's in place, but something's not sitting down flush. That's better. And the retaining ring is just a clip. Clips over the lens tube in the middle, clips into a little groove. Alright, well, if we set the shutter speed to that position is the 1/8 of a second, and if we cock it, it should fire. So I'll pull that out. Carefully cock this till it latches. Let's see what we get. That sounded pretty good to me. And that is pretty much it.